seeing as everybody's here. Welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. We continue to hold remote meetings while the governor's executive order continues to be in effect due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to remind our citizens that they can submit questions for items on today's agenda, as we have done in previous meetings. I encourage that public comments be submitted at this time. They will be read at the appropriate time during the meeting. Comments will be accepted up to the conclusion of the vote of the item. Comments may be submitted through the City of El Cajon's website, that's cityofElCajon.us, under Agendas and Minutes. Go to the video streaming and you will see a button to submit your comments. The meeting is called to order, and I'd like to ask for our city clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, sir. Council members, Mayor, council members, if you can please state that you are present when I call on your name. Mayor Wells.
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Here.
Council Member Goebel.
Here.
Council Member Mitchell.
Here.
And Council Member Ortiz.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Would you please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a brief moment of silence? I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the December 8th, 2020 meeting and the agenda of the January 12th, 2021 meeting in accordance with state law, council, and housing authority policy. We have one presentation on today's agenda. Director of Recreation, Frank Carson, will tell us about this.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate everybody for allowing me to have this presentation and also participating in this presentation, a virtual grand opening of our new mini pitch soccer court at Wells Park. And here's a little video to share with you all.
Hi, this is Mayor Bill Wells, City of El Cajon. Listen, I want to welcome you to our brand new soccer court in Wells Park. Hope you come down here and have a great time. Here we go. Hey, I'm Steve Goebel, council member here in the City of El Cajon, and I'm standing at our brand new mini pitch soccer park. And it's available for you to just come on down. It's open when the park's open. So come on down for a pickup game in soccer. Have fun, run around. We've got a great new facility, lots of color, lots of fun, lots of excitement. Great place to be. If you love soccer, come on down to the mini pitch field here at Wells Park in El Cajon. See you there.
Hi, I'm Michelle Mitchell. I'm an El Cajon City Council member for District 2, and welcome to our new soccer court.
Hi, I'm Phil Ortiz, El Cajon City Councilman for District 4. I want to welcome you to El Cajon's new soccer court at Wells Park. Come on out, check it out. Brand new courts. Play some pickup games on the weekends. Thanks for coming out.
Hi, my name is Marisa Flor, Human Resources Director for the City of El Cajon, and welcome to our soccer court.
Past Marisol. My name is Graham Mitchell. I'm the city manager for the City of El Cajon. Really excited to be here today and introduce you to our brand new soccer court here at Wells Park. Can't wait to see you play, and hopefully I'll join you in a game.
Hi, I'm Chief of Police Mike Moulton. Welcome to the Wells Park Soccer Court. Come out and play.
Hi, my name is Clay Shane. I'm the Director of Finance for the City of El Cajon. Welcome to the Wells Park Soccer Court.
Hey, I'm Tony Shute, the Community Development Director for the City of El Cajon. We want to welcome you to our new soccer court here at Wells Park. Please come and enjoy and have a good time.
Hello, I'm Yasmin Arellano. I'm the Director of Public Works for the City of El Cajon. I want to invite you to our new soccer court at Wells Park. Come and join us.
Hey everybody, I'm Sinan Kachi of the El Cajon Engineering Team. I'm the Project Manager for the Wells Park Mini Pitch. We want to welcome you all to come and play.
So I do want to thank everybody for participating in that. I heard that my mic issue might have not been the greatest on that, but we will have this up on our social media, including our Facebook as well as our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to hear it a lot better there as a refresher. But thank you all for participating in this. A lot of great things happen at Wells Park. This is just one example of all the good stuff going on there.
Frank, thanks so much. That was a lot of fun. I like Michelle's. Okay. All right. We're at agenda changes. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
Mr. Mayor, we have no changes to the agenda.
How about council members? I don't see any. All right. That brings us to consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any of the consent items? Don't see anything. Staff, how about you?
No, sir.
Angela, do we have any comments for the consent items?
We received no comments, sir.
All right. I'd like to make a motion then to approve the consent items.
Second.
Mayor Welker, vote please.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Yes.
Council Member Goebel.
Yes.
Council Member Mitchell.
Yes.
Council Member Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Thanks. All right, we're now at public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, did you receive any comments?
We received one, sir, and it's from Paul Segal, and it reads, is it not suspicious that the city requires us to use their selected rubbish sanitation company? I was fine with Waste Management and paying $26 a month. For some unknown reason, we were advised that we, as a community with no say in the matter, will be required to pay EDCO at $35 a month during dire financial times when money is short. If required to use a single service company, information should have been provided to us and a special vote by the people, not by the City Council. Now we need to wonder who owes who a favor. The council should have made the decision to favor those who pay the bills, the residents, not EDCO, and certainly not the City Council. We could have at least received a letter announcing the consideration for the change before it was decided. Then we should have been provided the opportunity to tell the council what is best for us, even if a special vote. A voter letting the council know how we decided and would expect the council to vote accordingly. If not, their jobs would be in jeopardy as they are now. And that's the end of the comment.
Yes. I don't usually respond to comments. I go ahead and let them just be heard. But I want to respond to this one because this is kind of confusing. And Graham, please feel to jump in if I misrepresent this in any way.
Certainly.
But right at the same time that we were having to come up and make a decision about who our waste hauler was going to be, we were told that all the waste haulers were going to have to raise their prices. So the raise in pricing that you got was not as a result of us changing waste haulers. The raise in pricing you got was that the entire industry had to add more money to what they were charging. And so it would have happened with Waste Management as well. And I know that's confusing, and I'm glad you asked the question. And certainly if we need to explain it more, we will. And Graham, I think we should at least put something on the website to explain this situation. Did I explain that properly?
You did, Mr. Mayor. I think it's also important to note that we've had the same waste hauling franchise since 1977 and had not competitively bid it for that period of time. And you're exactly right. Had we continued with waste management, they would have been required to implement some state mandated laws and requirements, which would have triggered an increase regardless of whether we stayed or left. As you recall, we went through a competitive bid process. Council hired a third-party consultant to help us do those applications, so there was no bias towards one or against another firm. And EDCO happened to be actually not only the most qualified, but also the least expensive for our ratepayers. We continue, even with the increases, we continue to be in the middle of the pack when it comes to rates in the county of San Diego. We are a bit concerned that this resident is paying $35 a month because the rate is not that much. So what we'll do is we'll reach out to the resident. We don't know if he's listening or not, but we'll reach out and we'll connect him with EDCO and make sure that rate is either better understood or maybe there's a reason why the rate's the way it is. So we'll make sure we get it back into line with what the rate should be, which is $25.89.
Yeah, I also think it's important that people understand that we had a significant savings by going with EDCO over other companies, and that savings was about $100 million over a 10-year period.
That's about right, correct.
Yeah. Any other council members want to chime in on this? Steve?
Yeah, I've seen on social media some posts about these confusion of rates. It's good that you're going to contact the customer. I encountered a similar situation, and that particular one, the person lived in unincorporated El Cajon. So it's possible that's true in this situation. Regardless, no city resident should pay more than $25.89 for 3 96-gallon carts. So I think contacting the resident or the commenter will clear up any confusion.
Agreed. Okay. Any other hands? All right, we'll move on. I hope that settles the situation. But Graham, I do think we should talk about ways to get this information out to the public in general, because I think there's confusion.
Yeah, we have done some social media posts in conjunction with EDCO's campaign, marketing campaign, and information campaign. We want to make sure that we're in lockstep with them. They've done a lot of outreach. The problem is that it is complicated, and is as simple as their brochure that they mailed out to everybody is. You do have to read it to understand it. It's not a soundbite. So we'll continue to explain and educate.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Graham. Okay. That then brings us to written communications, of which there are none. We are now at public hearings, and we have 2 items to consider. Item 10 is approval of the disposition of property located at 1034 North Magnolia Avenue and the second amendment to FY 2021, fiscal year 2021, 1-year action plan to reallocate CDBG funds for Wells Park. And staff, will you please explain all this?
Good afternoon, everyone, Mayor and council members. I am Jamie Van Raviston, the housing manager in the Community Development Department here at the city. This public hearing is an amendment for the fiscal year 2020-2021 action plan, which is in the current year. We're seeking public input on the disposition and change of use of that property at 1034 North Magnolia Avenue, and also seeking input and council's direction to restore the funding previously allocated to the Wells Park project. That funding will come from the sales proceeds on the sale of the building at Magnolia. So your agenda report provides the details for the background for the original purchase of the building in 1994 and the timeline for City Council's decision to dispose of the building for economic development purposes, for giving notice to Crisis House that the lease would not be renewed, and for the city's commitment to assist Crisis House financially for locating another suitable building and paying for that. On November 10th of 2020, in a public hearing, the City Council approved an award of $700,000 in CDBG funds to Crisis House to be used for the purchase of a new property they found in Santee, and from which to continue conducting the services they're currently conducting. And in order to fund that $700,000 allocation, the City Council approved the temporary reallocation of $550,000 in funds from the Wells Park project, along with some unallocated funds to meet the $700,000 commitment. The reallocated funding from Wells Park was intended to be restored upon the sale of the building. Escrow closed on the new property in Santee on or about November 30th of 2020, and by agreement, Crisis House has committed to continuing to provide the services to its vulnerable clients, including those from El Cajon, from their new location in Santee. Earlier this summer, the city received an offer to purchase the 1034 North Magnolia Avenue property for $1,060,000, and staff has determined that the future use of the property does not meet a national objective, which means it will not benefit low moderate income residents. Therefore, as outlined in the HUD regulation that I attached to your agenda report, the CDBG program must receive the full proceeds upon sale. So staff is recommending adoption of the second amendment to the current year action plan, approving the disposition of the Magnolia Avenue property and the receipt of the CDBG program income, and reallocating $550,000 from the proceeds to the Wells Park project to restore the funding previously allocated to it. Staff also recommends allocating up to $75,000 in general funds to reimburse the CDBG program for the costs of sale, which are not eligible using CDBG funds. One more thing I would like to point out, the resolution accompanying this item contained a typographical error in the fourth paragraph. There was a dollar digit missing. That error will be corrected in the final version of the resolution. And with that, staff is available to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks very much. Any questions? Okay, I think you did such a good job that nobody has anything to say.
I do have one question.
Okay.
So we're getting 1.06.
Yes.
We're giving away $700,000 to Crisis House.
Mm-hmm.
So the balance of $360,000 will go into the general CDBG budget to be allocated at a future date?
Correct. That the difference is, I think, $510,000, and that will just be go to fund balance, and it will be available for you to allocate to future projects that come forward. Okay. And if I may point out, those need to be capital projects too. They cannot be public service projects.
Great. Just a quick question. Do we have to wait for a period of time before we can start this process, or can we go immediately?
Do you mean closing escrow, or?
No, I'm sorry. Once escrow is closed and we've got this money, do we have to? Can we use it for capital projects immediately, or do we have to wait?
You need to have a public hearing and allocate the funds, but that's as immediate as you could.
Yeah.
Once we have the funds in our accounts, it's available for reallocation.
Yeah, I don't remember the month, but there's 1 month a year where we allocate CDBG funds. I was wondering if we had to wait for that.
No,
we are coming up to that, by the way. It's in February or March, so we'll be bringing forward some recommendations how to utilize those capital funds really soon.
Great, thanks. Okay. Angela, do we have any speaker cards on this item?
We have no comments for this item.
All right, so technically I had to open up the public hearing, so I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. Mayor Wells, your vote?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel?
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz?
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Super. Okay. Council, do you want to have any more discussion on this, or somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the next resolution in order. And Morgan, do you need me to read those 5 items?
You can just refer to the approval in accordance with the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Mayor Wells, your vote, please?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Thank you very much, Angela. All right. We are at administrative reports. We have 4 administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 12 is regarding local campaign contribution limits.
Mayor, we
Yes.
have another public hearing, item 11.
I apologize. Well, the item 11 is what I just wrote. What we just did is according to my script. So it goes right from 11 to administrative report. So what am
Mr. Mayor, we just did agenda item 10, and they look very similar to each other. So the next is the CDBG CARES Act for the second amendment for the action plan.
Okay, all right. My apologies. All right, the last public hearing item is 11, is regarding CDBG CARES Act, Second Amendment. You're right, it's not quite the same. To fiscal year 1920, one-year action plan to reallocate CDBG CV funds and to allocate CDBG CV3 funds. And staff, will you tell us about this, please?
Good afternoon again. This public hearing is for amendment to the fiscal year 1920 annual action plan. And yes, I know it's confusing. HUD does require us to do any of our CARES Act amendments to amending that plan. So they will all stay in the 1920 annual action plan. We're seeking public input and City Council's direction to amend the agreements and reallocate some of the first round of funding, which is CDBG CV, from one provider to another. And we'll talk about that. And to allocate the CDBG CV3 funds, which is the third round of funding, to Home Start for 2 programs to continue provision of the Emergency Motel Stays program and the Rental Mortgage and Utility Assistance programs in El Cajon. So this action reflects and formalizes City Council's stated priorities for the use of the CARES Act funding through HUD and tentative allocations made to continue successful programs to ensure families remain housed to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus. The background for the CARES Act funding I've provided to you in your agenda report. This is all CARES Act funding we're discussing is issued through HUD, so different from some earlier CARES Act money, so therefore it carries CDBG regulations with it. In the first round, we received $802,656 in CDBG CV funding. Allocations were provided to the providers and the programs as outlined on page 2 of your agenda report. I gave you a table there. And it shows all of the original allocations, and all of those programs began conducting services in the last week or so of May 2020. Through November 30th, approximately still $252,000 remains. Again, this is now January, so and the figures I'm giving you are through the end of November. So some of this funding has been additionally expended in December, and more current figures are pending from the providers. As noted in the table, one of the providers, CSA San Diego County, has expended the funds at a significantly slower rate than the other 2. In fact, through November 30th, less than 25% of their allocation of funds has been expended, and only 14 households have been assisted. Staff has been in contact frequently with CSA, San Diego County, and the other providers, and in a recent meeting with the city manager, all of the providers understood there was a possibility of reallocating funds to faster-moving projects. In recent conversation with the executive director of CSA, she indicated she understood the reasons why we were recommending this reallocation, and she did not object. On September 11th of 2020, the city was notified it would be allocated an additional $1,009,000 and change in the third round of funding, referred to as CDBG CV3, and on October 13th, the City Council gave preliminary direction to staff to allocate a portion of those CDBG CV3 funds to continue providing the emergency motel stays and rental mortgage and utility assistance programs once the first round of funding was exhausted or nearly exhausted. So this action formalizes those preliminary allocations that were given in a public hearing or public meeting, I believe. And so this is the requirement by HUD for the public hearing. Staff recommends adopting the second amendment to the fiscal year 1920 annual action plan, amending the agreement with CSA San Diego County to reduce the funding award to $80,000 to allow them to assist the remaining families who have already applied through them. And then we recommend reallocating $120,000 of that money to Home Start for continuation of their rental and utility assistance program. We will need to amend that agreement as well. We'll increase that total funding. That would become $292,362. And lastly, staff recommends allocating $100,000 in CDBG CV3 funds to Home Start for additional emergency motel stays, and another $100,000 in CDBG CV funds to Home Start for continuation of the rental mortgage and utility assistance programs. And unfortunately, I need to point out one more typo. In the notice of the public hearing, it contained a typographical error which said January 12th of 2020. It's clear by the date of publication that the date was intended to be 2021. And with that, staff is available to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks. Appreciate that report. Any questions from the council?
I have two questions. The last sentence of the staff report says additional public hearings will be required to allocate the remainder of the CV3 funds. Do we know about how much that is?
Yes, well, you are allocating $200,000 today, so that from the $1,009,307, so the remainder would be $809,307.
That still can be allocated someday.
Yes.
For people who have received assistance already, are they eligible to apply again for continued assistance and increase their money that they get?
The CDBG regulations allow it up to 6 months in total in assistance. The current guidelines written when we first wrote the guidelines for this program were a maximum of 3 months. So that would be a change in the guidelines for the existing maximums.
I think you can see that some members of the public may say, hey, we want to make sure that as many people as possible have a chance rather than going back to the same person.
Correct.
I think that's what the public would say would be a concern.
That was the original intention, was to help as many people as possible.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Do we know what the backlog is with any of the agencies that are putting out money?
They receive lots of applications at a time, and as we even help them with either public announcements on Facebook and such, or in the beginning we even did an announcement in the newspapers, they receive a number of applications and they have to close those, I forget what they're called, but they have to stop taking applications for a while until they process the backlog that they have. Many of them take about 50 to 80 applications and then they stop. And then they are reopening the program as they get through these. So unfortunately, we've seen some stops and starts, but they open it as soon as they realize they can take more applications.
And do we know what the turnaround is? The turnaround, like from the time someone applies to the time they actually receive the rental assistance.
I don't have specific information on one single number I can give you, but sometimes it's lengthy based on the amount of time it takes that person to submit all the documentation.
Okay.
You know, that's a really good point. Is there anything we can do to decrease the burden on people as far as documentation goes?
Well, again, I'll point out this is CDBG funding. And
okay, so the documentation correlates with what the CDBG is asking for.
Correct. And I've talked to the providers multiple times, and we all agree there's nothing we could really leave out that we're asking for.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you having checked that. All right. Yeah. If you can be creative about helping people with this, maybe even setting up somebody that can help them fill out their forms. But probably the difficult part is they have to get documents, right? That
Correct.
they might not necessarily have at hand.
Correct. The providers are really good at walking them through, and I will point out that all three languages are represented, and they are very patient and helpful in walking it through. They understand that this is not an easy thing, but most people are able to get the documentation. Just takes some work and some coaching.
Yeah. Okay.
Excuse me, Mayor and Council, if I might add, going to one provider, HomeStart, I think will certainly help streamline the process. And two, HomeStart has gone to an online application as well. We think those two efforts will help streamline the process and get this money out to the community a bit quicker than it has in the past.
Yes.
So is the timeline, the turnaround time, I know with the county, they opened up in September for applications, and it's taking at least 3 months for people to get their money. Are we looking at somewhat the same timeline for city or with HomeStart?
No, we saw expenditures in the first month, so the providers were cutting checks as quickly as they can, as soon as they have all the documentation that's listed. So
yeah, the county's taking, the county took 3 months for some people.
Yeah,
to get money out. And then what happens is that landlords are, they're pressuring their tenants for the money, and the tenant doesn't have the money. And so in one particular case, it took some intervention, and the woman was able to get her money from the county. And so I'm just a little concerned that we're going to have similar situations as we continue on with people not working and businesses closed down. I want to make sure that, our residents are getting the help that they need. And because it's becoming more and more frustrating, where do you go?
We have a little more flexibility here because all of the providers have agreed they are advancing the funds to the landlords and seeking reimbursement from us.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other council members? Okay. Let me see here. Have Angela, I'd like to open up a public hearing and ask Angela if you've received any comments for this item.
We received no comments for this item, sir.
Then I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second.
Mayor Wells, your vote, please.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Yes.
Council Member Goebel.
Yes.
Council Member Mitchell.
Yes.
Council Member Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
That's great. All right, we're then back to council. Do you have any discussion on this, or somebody like to make a motion?
Move adoption. Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second.
Mayor Wells, your vote, please.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Yes.
Council Member Goebel.
Yes.
Council Member Mitchell.
Yes.
Council Member Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Okay, great. All right, now I'm going to boldly go to the administrative reports. Is that okay? All right. Give me 1 second, please. All right, we have 4 administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 12 is regarding local campaign contribution limits, and I'll ask staff to tell us about this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Earlier in 2019, the state legislature and then adopted or passed a AB 571, and this was later signed by the governor in October 2019. So this has been over a year ago, and it did not go into effect until January 1st, 2021. So this is a brand new law. And essentially what it says is cities across the state of California had varying levels or different requirements for limiting campaign contributions for a local municipal campaign. And as you recall, El Cajon, along with four other jurisdictions in San Diego County, have no limitations. There were some cited examples of these extreme, massive amounts of donations given to campaigns, and because of that, the state legislature looked at setting sort of a uniform default amount of $4,700, which is the amount that state assembly representatives and state senators are required to, or that's what their limit is for their campaign. So the legislation allows cities to still choose either higher or lower amounts. So Solana Beach, that has a limit of 100, can still maintain their limit of 100, but they would have to do something proactive to do that. The city of El Cajon, as of January 1st, no longer has an unlimited campaign contribution amount. We are now set at $4,700. And staff is presenting this item to get some direction from council to see whether you want us, as staff, to come back with a resolution or an ordinance to consider a different amount than the default amount, which will change from year to year. The staff report, which has been provided, includes the last 5 election cycles. It shows what the maximum was in that cycle. So you can see there's no hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions being made. And then the max is $10,000. And then we had 2 years actually where the most amount was a $5,000 amount or $4,000 amount in 2016. We've also included a table in the staff report that identifies the different limits in the different cities within the county of San Diego. And this was pre-January 1st because all the non-specified limits are now just defaulted at $4,700. So with that, staff is here to answer any questions that you may have about the process, what that would look like, and then take some direction of whether you want staff to come back with something for further consideration. So today is not really deciding the matter, it's just giving us direction to whether to decide on that matter, if that is understandable.
Graham, can we decide on the matter if we choose to?
You are required to adopt either resolution or ordinance. So whatever your limit is, it has to be set by one of those two mechanisms. Because we didn't have direction, we don't have a resolution to present to you today. So if council had some direction or coalesced around an area, then we could come back with a resolution for your adoption or consideration for adoption.
Okay, thanks, Graham. Any questions for Graham?
I think the clarification is if we take no action, the default is $4,700.
That's exactly right, Mr. Goebel.
I'd like to see us raise it. I think that we're going to be, as time goes on and we have more and more people engaging in the political process, I think that sometimes it takes a lot of money to run a campaign, as those of us who just recently ran. I think 10,000 is a good limit.
Okay. Anybody else?
I agree with Michelle. 10,000 would be a reasonable limit.
Okay. Any other discussion before we go to comments? All right, let's hear the public. Let's hear public comment. Would somebody want to chip in?
Yeah, this is Phil. If I can speak real quick, my thoughts are. Yeah, I think it's good that people engage in the political process. And with regard to limits, I don't like the idea of limiting the individual donations for a couple different reasons. One, I think it's a freedom of speech thing where people should be able to donate to a campaign with the money that they earn. And two, if you put limits on these campaigns, the money is still going to be spent. And the way it's spent, from what I've learned in this last campaign, is it's going to be spent through independent expenditures. through political action committees, and you don't know where that money's coming from. You don't know who the donors are through that. And so my take is I'd rather have ultimate transparency where the donors donate directly to the campaign and it's listed on their Form 470, so everyone can see who's donating to this candidate. So I think it's a transparency thing where we don't want to limit it because that's going to force the money to a more underground mechanism, if that makes sense, where there's less transparency. So I'm an advocate of keeping it high, and that's why I kind of like the no limit rule. But we can't have that anymore. So
let's hear from.
I've got a comment on the dollar amount. As years go on, the dollar amount is affected by inflation and things like that. So one way, an alternative way to do it is to peg it to an index. And as that index rises, the amount rises. And for instance, the county supervisor's pay, I believe, is indexed to the judges or something like that. As the judges' pay goes up, so does the county supervisors. So they don't need to keep revisiting raising their pay. It's just kind of automatically indexed for what's current outside of them. And where I'm going with this is, say, as an alternative, if you said twice the limit for state assemblymen, for instance, if the current limit is 4,700, if I heard right, twice the limit would be 9,400 in today's dollars. But 3 or 4 years from now, it might be $10,500 or something. So an alternative is to say twice the state assembly maximum limit rather than a fixed dollar amount.
Good idea. All right, we'll come back and discuss all that. Let's go ahead and hear from the public. Angela, any cards?
We received no comments, sir.
Okay. Well, that's easy. All right, back to discussion amongst the council.
Bill makes a really compelling argument here about transparency and not driving those campaign contributions underground. Can we still have no limit?
Mr. Kendrick, I was actually going to chime in and offer that. Mr. Ortiz mentioned that we can no longer have a no limit, but your policy could actually have a no limit policy. So if you adopted a resolution, it could actually say no limit if you wanted to. You have that as an option.
You know, just to chime in, I'm comfortable with any of those three suggestions. I think they'll all work. I mean, the reality is we're not going to see many contributions over 10,000, but so I'm comfortable with capping it at that. Steve's idea is a good one. You could also take 10,000 and link that to a cost of living increase. So if the cost of living increases 4%, you could take that 10,000 and I think that would be 10,400 that year. So any of those work. I think we're all basically on the same page. It's just a matter of implementation.
One other option, just to put all the options on the table, is to punt for an amount of time, 3 to 6 months, and watch what the other cities, 6 cities who have no specified limit, see if they take any action as kind of a bellwether of what the pulse is.
My issue with that is only that in modern campaign seasons, we're 2 years out, and we've got 2 of us who've got to go out and be involved in raising money now. So 3 to 6 months might be the difference between survival and not.
Okay. Just wanted to put the option on the table.
It's an option. I certainly agree.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think it would probably be imprudent for the council to vote on an amount when that's not really the intent. So we heard a couple different options. What we can do is we can actually prepare those different options in the form of resolution or resolutions, and then bring that back. And the council can make a final decision about that. But we can take the direction that we got tonight or this afternoon and present that. And if there's any pros and cons, again, as I explained to another council member earlier today, this is one of those agenda items where staff has absolutely no recommendation. This is all in your area. So we can just present a couple different things for you to consider.
All right. So do you need a vote today, Graham, or have you got everything you need?
Unless Mr. Foley believes so, I think I have the direction I need to bring something back.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Then we will move on. The next administrative report is item 13. Item 13 is regarding the expirations on city commissions, and I'd like to ask staff to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Let me get this PowerPoint up really fast. Don't worry, it's only 2 slides. So the city currently has 3 commissions or 2 commissions and a committee that have some vacancies. The staff report lays what those vacancies are, but just as a reminder, the council has a couple options of how to fill those. You have a policy that recommends or directs the council to go through an application process when there is a vacancy, but the council doesn't. You have the prerogative to choose other options to fill vacancies. So to fill these vacancies, you can follow the sort of the prescribed or the historic method of filling them, and that's through an application process. Ms. Cortez, our city clerk, has applications ready to go, and they can be released as soon as tomorrow. You could also just reappoint an individual that is interested. And the council has the ability to modify the terms of any of these individuals that you have appointed over the years. So you should keep that in mind as well. So with that, we have currently 1 vacancy on the Personnel Commission. There's no interested incumbent to that, so it wasn't like someone's term expired and they would like to be back on. We just have no, the individual that's coming off is not interested in returning. For the Planning Commission, there is 1 vacancy. It's Mr. Darren Morose. He is actually interested in continuing to serve on the Planning Commission and would be applying as part of the process if that was the option the City Council took. The other is the city has a Public Safety Facilities Financing Oversight Committee, or as we call for short, the Prop O Oversight Committee. It currently has 5 vacancies. There are 2 incumbents that have expressed interest in continuing to serve on that committee. And as you read the staff report, you'll see that it's not an easy committee to fill because there's individuals that need certain requirements or skill sets to be on that. But Ms. Spiconi and John Forrest have both expressed interest in continuing to serve and would likely apply if we opened up the application process. In the case of the Prop O Oversight Committee, staff would really recommend that the council consider reappointing these individuals because this has been historically a difficult committee to fill, number 1. And 2, we're hoping that we will have expended the remainder of the Prop O funds within the next year. And so the Oversight Committee will actually be disbanded once the very last dollar is spent. So with that, this would be a short-term commitment for any individual that is appointed to that. So with that, council, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have about the options before you or answer any questions.
Thanks, Graham. Council, any questions? Anyone? Okay. Angela, do we have any speaker cards on this item?
Sir, we do. We received a comment from Mr. Christopher Alley, and it reads, I am sending this email to strongly suggest that Humbert Cabrera be replaced on the Planning Commission. As a city resident and watching the planning commission meetings, I have seen him talk down to applicants and treat them very unfairly. He even went as far as to call Robert Garmo, an applicant looking to build a wonderful project, greedy. I think the city can do better with a more humble community leader. Thank you, Chris Alley, resident of El Cajon. And we have no more comments.
Okay. Thanks very much. Okay, back to council. Can you put all the council videos up so I can see who needs to talk?
Yeah, let me unshare my screen. Unless Frank, can you do that?
Let me check real.
I think that did it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, council, first I'll give you, my thought is I'll give you the opportunity to discuss whatever you want. And then I think let's just break it down by commission and deal with each commission individually. So overall, anybody have any comments?
So this is Phil. It sounds like the Public Safety Facility Financing Oversight Committee, that's hard seats to fill, and we have incumbents that are interested in still serving. I would be, as well as Planning Commission, Darren Moreau's, I would be in favor of reappointing them to their respective commissions, because like it said, historically it's been hard to fill those spots. So
okay, let's just have all the discussion and we'll go back and vote on each of those things.
Yeah, I agree with Phil. I know Darren in particular, because I've seen planning commission meetings. He's always respectful to the applicants, makes good decisions that reflect what the city is trying to do to bring in more investment, more jobs. So I'd like to see Darren reappointed and the two people on the Public Safety Committee also reappointed.
Gary, I'm going to ask you about Humbert. We've had a lot of concerns about Mr. Cabrera, the things he's put on his website, the grandstanding, the perceived mistreatment of some of the applicants. One of the things I remember is that when we were appointing him, and I was the one who was pushing to appoint him, one of your concerns was that he was doing business with people that would be coming before the Planning Commission. Do you remember talking about that? Am I asking that question?
Yes, I do. And my biggest concern is that his company would go into city offices requesting building permits or maybe zoning or planning changes. And then that night he might be ruling on the decisions of those very same employees that he saw in the morning.
What's the reality of that? Has that been happening at all? Do you know?
I'd have to ask. My understanding that there is either perceived or actual conflict of interest. And I know he said that he didn't need to be doing as much business in the city. Maybe we could ask Graham Mitchell about that.
Mr. Kendrick and Mayor Wells, we expressed some concern when Mr. Cabrera was appointed on the Planning Commission that we noticed that there was an increase of his presence at the counter in the planning department. I don't have definitive or quantitative data about that, but we saw him more than we had in the past. But we do have some quantitative data. We looked at how many permits were applied for by Mr. Cabrera's firm the year prior to his appointment on the Planning Commission, and there was 4 applications prior. the year prior. And then looking at the year post appointment to the Planning Commission, there was 11. So the notion of slowing down business or curtailing business in El Cajon did not occur.
Did you discuss that with him?
We have not, because there was no conflict of interest per se. There was no items that he was looking at submitting and then also reviewing, because he wouldn't be able to do that. So it wasn't an issue for us. However, it is a bit of a concern when someone's business increases dramatically upon appointment.
Okay. All right.
The Fair Political Practice Commission continuing education that we all have to take on a regular basis points out the problems with conflicts of interest and appearance of conflicts of interest. And I think this is at minimum an appearance of conflict of interest. And I think there are other people that we could have on the commission that wouldn't have that issue. And Mr. Cabrera is certainly active in the community and is probably on a dozen or more boards or public service organizations. And I think his talents are probably better spent there.
So, before we get too far, is Mr. Cabrera tendered his resignation from the Planning Commission, or is he still on the commission?
He's on the commission, I believe.
He's on the commission.
I think this item does not address his ability to stay on that commission right now. I think it's premature to be specifically discussing what to do with Mr. Cabrera, even though the public did make that comment. We're here only to try to find out how you want us to proceed with filling the vacancies, which were occurring by other commissioners, not Mr. Cabrera.
Fair enough. It's just, we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
The due process that should be followed. It's a lot less due process than many other things. But I think Mr. Kendrick even may recall personally having gone through something similar in the past. And I'm sure you understand that it's a very sensitive issue of trying to take action and remove somebody from the appointed commission.
Fair enough. All right. Any more comments on any of the issues on the commissions before we start taking it case by case and voting? All right. I don't see anything. Graham, let's start with the Proposition O reappointment.
So as you recall, there's 5 vacancies. John Forrest and Kathy Spacconi have both expressed interest in continuing to serve on the committee. So if the council wanted to reappoint them, we would then need authorization to issue applications for the other 3 vacancies. Or just do all 5 vacancies if that's your choice. Those are sort of the 2 options for the Prop O Oversight Committee.
Give it to me again, please, the 2 options.
So the 2 options, one would be just to put out an application for 5 openings on the committee, or put out applications for 3 openings and then reappoint Mr. Forrest and Ms. Spacconi.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we do what Graham is just suggesting in the latter of his 2 options. Unless there's any more discussion, I'd like to make that motion.
Second the motion.
Mayor Wells, your vote, please.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel.
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Great. Okay. Graham, what's our next?
So the next would be the Personnel Commission. You have no incumbent, so staff would recommend you authorize us to submit or to issue applications for the vacancy.
I think that is our only choice. Make a motion to that effect.
Second.
Mayor Wells, your vote.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel.
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right. I guess next is Planning Commission.
So again, you have an interested incumbent. So the option would be to reappoint Mr. Moroz, or you could open it up for applications.
I'd like to reappoint Mr. Moroz. That would be my motion, unless there's more discussion.
Second.
Mayor Wells, your vote.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel.
Yes.
Councilmember Meschel.
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
And I'd just like to editorialize that Darren Moroz has been a hard-working guy, doing this for many, many years for no recognition, and he's done an excellent job. He runs a good meeting, and I think the customers feel like they're being well treated, and he's very smart and very articulate, and I thank him for his service. Many of us have been on planning commission, and it's a tough job sometimes, and we need guys like Darren. So I'm gratified that he's been reappointed.
Second.
So, Mr. Wells and council, with that direction, what we'll do is we'll get applications out on the street. We'll do some social media and some press release work. The goal will be to conduct interviews on February 9th at 7 p.m. We haven't had a 7 p.m. meeting since, I think, maybe April. And so this will be a chance to meet in the evening again. So I think that would be the fairest for our applicants.
Great. Let's get back in the chambers.
We're getting close.
Good. All right. The third administrative report, item 14, is for an employee wellness incentive program. And staff, will you please tell us about this?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, Marisol Thorne, Director of Human Resources. I'm here today to bring forth authorization to move forward with a citywide employee wellness incentive program, which would be for all benefited city employees. As you're aware, in recent years, the city has focused on employee wellness, and working along with the departments and our labor groups, we've realigned our employee assistance program. For our public safety group, we've introduced a fire station dog at Station 6, and recently we've been working with Kaiser to bring health education and to have a formal wellness program for all city employees. All these programs are intended to be proactive programs. In the past, we've had programs that are really more reactive, that have created issues and end up costing more money. These programs that I mentioned are effective, but we are missing a component, and that is having employees take the first step. And so in order to incentivize and encourage our staff to seek treatment, to find out how they're doing mentally and physically, we want to introduce this program that will afford 4 hours of leave time for any employee who takes advantage of the program. And on an annual basis, we'll do a wellness check and mental check to establish a baseline. Addressing these needs ahead of time will allow employees to be healthy and to be at work and be productive. Like I mentioned, employees who take full advantage of the program get 4 hours of leave time annually. The worst case scenario cost for this program is approximately $45,000. The investment is pretty nominal compared to what we get in return. When we look at employees who are out on a personal leave, even for 12 weeks, we're looking at staff time being reallocated to other employees. That impacts morale. For our public safety group, we have to backfill positions. So now we're caught paying overtime. So as you can see, having a program that will incentivize our employees to be proactive and to take the first step of establishing a baseline really is a benefit to the city, and it's a high return. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Thank you. This is this is an outstanding program, especially with the lockdown orders and people being out of touch with family members and just general interaction. I think it's extremely needed, not just for PD, but just our overall employees. But this is just an allotment of time off of work for them to go to a health health and wellness check. It's not us paying for the visit, so to speak. Is that right?
That's correct. So employees receive, if they attend a health checkup through their own provider under their own insurance, they will receive 2 hours of leave time. If they attend a mental checkup, which is either through their own provider, which they pay for, or through the employee assistance program, they receive an additional 2 hours of leave time.
So this program is basically a way to show our employees we care about your mental health. It's important that you're healthy, and go do it. Basically, we're giving you space to operate. Right.
Yes, because we can offer any program, and we can offer 20 programs, but if people don't take that first step to even know that they have a need, we'll never address those issues.
Great. Thank you, Marisol. I appreciate the work on this.
More questions? Marisol, I have a question.
Yes.
How do you reduce the stigma issue? People, if they had to go to their captain and said, hey, captain, I need 4 hours off to see a psychiatrist, that might be a difficult thing for a firefighter to do, or for a police officer or public works employee, because they don't want to show weakness.
Right. So there's two things. One, we have HIPAA rights. So supervisors, management, they do not have a right to know why employees are seeking medical treatment. So employees already have that protection. Some of these programs, including the one we're talking about today, that actually came up through the Police Association. It was highly supported by our chief at PD, and we felt it was a program for all, that it would benefit all. But I think the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, I believe that stigma is reduced.
Mr. Mayor, also one of the things that this program does would allow a police officer or a firefighter on their day off to go in and get the assistance, but they would still get that benefit. So it gives them that other option and incentivizes them. And just, I do a biweekly newsletter to the city employees, and we talk about mental wellness a lot, and I'm pretty open about things that I struggle with, and make it clear that it's totally okay to go talk to people, and it's something that I've done and found benefit in my life. I think the more, as Marisol indicated, the more that we talk about this as a leadership group, as a council, as executive management staff, I think that will carry over into the rest of our staff, and it's an important message that we need to send to all of our employees.
Amen. One of my goals in the next 2 years is to really push for a really comprehensive psychiatric and psychological treatment program for our employees. I think it's the right thing to do, and I think that the city has a unique set of circumstances and a unique set of situations that are not really congruent with corporate America. Obviously, police and fire officers face significant challenges and have PTSD problems just by the nature of their work. But public works employees oftentimes are doing things where they're out in the public and they're being criticized and heckled and yelled at, and they're in dangerous situations. And I think we could probably, even look at city managers who are probably having a lot of pressure put on them. I say it tongue in cheek, but it's serious. I think that we should step up our game in regards to this. So I'm really pleased that you brought this to us, and I heartily agree with it. Do we have any public comment on this?
Bill, I have one comment. I agree with everything the mayor has to say. Sometimes public employees have a pretty tough road. So I think that this is certainly a step in the right direction.
Did I skip over anybody else? Anybody else want to make a comment?
I'll have some comments after speaker cards.
Super. Okay. Let's go to our speaker cards.
We have no comments on this, sir.
Then right back to Steve.
Okay. I had to put on my taxpayer hat with this one, since we're the watchdog of the taxpayer money. And I support this initiative, but I had a pretty thorough discussion with the city manager on this from a taxpayer's point of view, because it's a sensitive time. We must realize there are business owners who are struggling not only for their income, but for their investment in their business. They're losing it all. So I'm very sensitive when we increase or add a benefit to public employees at a time when the private sector, we just vote on a rental assistance for people to keep their houses. So I at least want to kind of go on the record to say, from a taxpayer point of view, I acknowledge the difficulties out in society that are going on. This particular item is not pensionable, as I understand, so it doesn't add additional cost. But here's something, having worked in the private sector a while, this is important. In the private sector, if I want to go to a doctor's appointment for 2 hours, well, I just go during work time. But a police officer or a fire department person can't necessarily take 2 hours in the middle of their shift to go to a doctor appointment. So they have to go on their time off. Well, time off's time off. So this compensates them for using personal time. So I want to acknowledge that part. So this is consistent with the private sector. My company, for instance, doesn't charge sick time for 2 hours or less. It's just considered part of the job. That there may be occasions when you step out for a couple of hours. Use an hour for lunch, plus your additional. So this policy is consistent with some companies in the private sector that don't ding you 2 hours of sick time for going to a doctor's appointment. Because this will restore those 2 hours of sick time that they are going to use, and this will restore that, as I understand that. So that's consistent. Third, out of my fifth point, we have to see every organization has to see their employees not as expenses, but as assets. We spend a lot of money on training. My goodness, how much do we spend for fire and police, for specialized training, but for all city employees in training. And reduced turnover is lower expense. So the institutional knowledge that they gain, this is something we got to keep people healthy. When we keep people healthy, then they're not sick. When they're not sick, they're more productive. I think the wellness program on the physical side is excellent. I'll tell you from personal experience, I've had a blood panel done every year now since my early 40s. At age 47, my doctor said, I don't know why you haven't dropped dead of a heart attack. He said, your blood panel shows this chemistry of this one protein off the charts. And he said, I don't understand why you haven't dropped. And we mitigated that going forward. So and I believe already 2 firefighters have found similar situations where they've done blood panels and found things that were unknown to them. So it's a very valuable program. On the mental side, absolutely, it's a stressful position. I want to have them do anything they can to take advantage of that. This past Saturday, I was cleaning up some trash under the Greenfield Bridge and happened to be just underneath the bridge when that horrific rollover crash happened. And it was a fatality. And I can tell you, I saw firefighters and police officers dealing with that fatality. And I can't imagine how stressful that is. So having put on my taxpayer hat to say, are we giving something that the private sector doesn't get? No, we're giving something consistent. And we're giving something that recognizes our employees as assets, not expenses.
All right, Steve, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes.
Michelle.
So I want to agree with providing this benefit, especially to our firefighters and police officers. The public's opinion has been in the past that we need to retrain police officers to be more compassionate, to just be mentally stable. I think offering this benefit kind of helps with that, to help mitigate problems. Being a police officer or a firefighter is extremely stressful, and I think that it is money well spent. And if we present it to the public in that response of we need to retrain our officers, this is part of that training. Getting mental health is part of that whole program. And I'm not saying we need to retrain our officers at all, but I think having that outlet for them in a mental health capacity and giving them support is one way to keep our officers, our firefighters, mentally copacetic, so to speak. And that it definitely is money well spent. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate that. Anybody else? All right, Graham, so you don't need a vote on this. You just need direction, right?
I think we do need authorization to implement. So I think we will need a vote, Mr. Mayor.
Okay then. Well, I would like to make a motion then that we implement this.
Second.
Mayor Welzer, vote please.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel.
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Thanks. The last administrative report is item 15. It's a COVID-19 status report. And Graham, will you be giving us this?
Mr. Mayor, I will be giving this. Let me pull up on the PowerPoint. I've added a few different types of slides for this presentation today. A little different than what you've seen in the past. There'll be a bit of a focus on the vaccine as we get toward the end of the presentation. So as you recall, we've been doing these every council meeting, just as a chance to sort of touch base on where we're at as a county, and then also where we are as a community and some of the implications that are occurring as a result. I'll be presenting some data. In the past, the council's asked for some information about hospitalization and ICU capacity, so I'll have some information there. And at the last council meeting, there was some discussion and requests for data about mortality rates or the number of deaths in El Cajon. And I actually have a table that shows mortality rates for most of the jurisdictions within the county, so you can kind of see where we fit. Then we'll end with vaccines. So this is a very complicated slide, as I present in every presentation, but it's kind of it's sort of the main slide that the county relies on. And what it does is it shows the amount of testing that is occurring day by day, the amount of new cases that are occurring each day, and this rolling percentage of infection rates. So the percentage of people that are tested and the number of people that test positive. So as you can see, there's a bit of a dip in the rolling percentage of people testing positive, in part because there's just a lot of people been testing lately. And you can see that there was a spike in increased testing shortly after the new year as people either came home from vacations or recognized that they spent a lot of time with family members over Christmas and New Year. So there's been some increased testing, but not as much as there was earlier in the month of December. So it has been a little bit stabilized. You can also see that the number of new cases per day, which is shown in that orange, has dramatically increased over the last month. So we're averaging over 3,000, 3,500 cases a day, new cases. But as you recall, we're about 2 weeks or a month ago, we had a whole bunch of other new cases. And so if you look at the actual number of active cases, it's not as dramatic as some of the tables shown by the county. This shows on a per week basis, so it's taking data for each week and looking at the number of new cases that have been reported. And this is not active cases, but these are new cases. You can see since November 9th, between November 9th and January 4th, so almost 2 months, there's been a 410% increase in cases per week. That's pretty dramatic. However, I think it's also important to note that there's this constant fear that cases equate to a 400% increase in hospitalization, a 400% increase in mortality or deaths. But that has not been the case. So looking at those same week-by-week data for hospitalizations and deaths, you can see that hospitalizations has gone up 82% in that same amount of time, and deaths has gone up 94%. There's clearly a correlation with the spike in cases and the spike in hospitalizations and the spike in mortality rates, but not at the same degree as the total number of cases that have gone up. We have some data that looks at the number of active cases in El Cajon. We have something similar for the county, which I'm not showing today. But as you can see, our active case rate has gone up, but it kind of goes up and down depending on when a spike occurred and if those folks are coming off or getting better. So our numbers have increased. This looks very similar to the rest of the county, but there have been some days where there was improvements. There was decline in the total number of cases. This shows the same table, but just for the last 30 days. Again, you can see that there's been a little bit of, from a trend perspective, a bit of a flattening of that. And we're expecting that we'll probably see an ongoing increase, but it should start flattening out just as people get through that holiday season and as folks become vaccinated. One of the data points that the county puts out is some demographic data on people that have the number of cases, number of deaths, number of hospitalizations, and they break it down by a lot of different demographic data, racial and ethnicity, gender, and also age. I wanted to point out that if you look at the deaths specifically, 88% of the deaths are for those that are occurring in the age groups of 60 and older, with almost half of that for 80 years and older. So the vulnerability of the more aged population in our communities is real. And the other data point, I don't have a slide on this, but I think it's an important point to remind people that 94% of the COVID-related deaths, there was actually an other underlying health condition associated with that COVID death. So the county has published some mortality rate data. They put it out per 100,000. Some of the communities along the coastal communities like Solana Beach, Del Mar, and Encinitas are actually lumped into one group to create some anonymity with some of the smaller jurisdictions. But National City has the highest mortality rate in the county, followed by El Cajon. Southeast San Diego is closely behind us, and then Chula Vista and La Mesa are not far behind us either. So we based on this, you can calculate how many deaths we've had. We've had a little under 100 deaths in our community since this all began last year. One of the other reports that the county looks at is part of their contact tracing is they look at people that have tested positive for COVID, where they potentially exposed other people to. And so I'll use the cursor here. If you look at this rate here, so 54% of those that have COVID believe, based on the contact tracing reporting, that they have not exposed other people outside of their household to COVID. Workplace is where the majority of those occurrences are happening. People come to work sick, or they don't know they're sick, they're asymptomatic, or maybe they're in the first day of feeling sick and they're not quite there to stay home. So, I mean, we've taken a very proactive approach here at City Hall and with the fire department and the police department that if you don't feel well, you shouldn't come to work. And I think the message is being heard, and it's helped some of our rate cases within the city, at least within our city organization. But as you can see, bars and restaurants make up a very small percentage of exposure. Gyms, less than 0.5%. Places of worship, 2%. So these are very low places of risk in our communities. One of the questions that has been asked over time is our hospital capacity for new patients. This is a graph that we've shown the last few times, and it shows the number of total hospital beds available, what percentage of those or how much of those are COVID-related patients, and then how much capacity is left. The goal really is to have 20% bed capacity, and we're at that mark right now. But as you can see, as COVID-related patient cases have gone up, other types of hospital bed usage has gone down. This shows some ICU capacity data as well. This shows the total. If you look at, there's a couple things going on here. One is the sort of that bluish green bar shows the number of COVID-related ICU, and then the orange is all other ICU. So you can assume that those are always going to be full to a certain degree. You could probably even say that given COVID, those are actually decreased because there's less other occurrences happening, less traffic accidents, less influenza cases. But based on this data, you can see that we in our county have capacity, ICU bed capacity. Not a lot, but there is capacity within the hospital system. And this does not include federal hospitals or some other ICU opportunities that can be made available. As you remember, we are currently in the purple based on ICU capacity because we're lumped in with the Southern California region, even though we have local ICU capacity. The way that the state counts the metric for ICU availability, there is 0% availability. So we will be in the current state that we're in at least for another 3 weeks unless miraculously ICU beds open up tomorrow. So I would make the assumption that we're going to probably be in the situation we are at least through the, I've heard the county say through the end of January. I think that's too optimistic. Based on the data, I think it's to the end of February before we actually go back to our former county-wide purple tier and not be lumped in with the rest of Southern California. If we can switch over to vaccines really quickly, I thought this was interesting. The White House recently put out some great data and some references to some CDC websites, and there's a great chart that shows how states are comparing to each other in terms of administering a vaccine to their population. And these are vaccines per 100,000 folks. And South Dakota and West Virginia have been doing great. In fact, the governor of West Virginia went onto a press conference as part of a CDC press conference and talked about what they're doing. And I got to tell you, California has made the process complicated, where West Virginia has made the process not complicated. And I grant that South Dakota and West Virginia and North Dakota and Alaska all have very low density populations. California is a very dense state in terms of population. We do have more challenges. But the fact that we're in the bottom 10 in terms of getting the vaccine administered is a sign of a little bit too much bureaucracy in the process. At the local level, I just have to admit that it is a bit of a mess. I was on 2 county calls last week, one with elected officials and one with city managers, and in both instances, it was frankly difficult to follow along with what the plan is, if there is a plan. It sounds like hospitals get some, and if you're a hospital based out of Los Angeles, the county doesn't really know what level of distribution is occurring at the local level. Fire departments have been given authority to administer, but I can tell you, in speaking with our fire chief this morning, there still is a lot of unknown. I know that those those employees in our city that are eligible as part of the Tier 1 that have received vaccines have only received them because somebody thought out too many vaccines and we rushed some folks down to get them. There's been no plan to vaccinate our staff to this point. And I don't know what's happening in our skilled nursing facilities. It's a bit of an unknown to city management at this time. So I apologize, I don't have much of an update, but that's as much as I can give. So with that, staff's here to answer any questions that you may have, and we're always interested to hear if there's additional data that would be useful to the city council to be included. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I turn it back over to you.
Council, any questions?
Question. Do we know why El Cajon has such high numbers?
We don't. I have some theories behind it, but those are just theories. It's clear if you look at where there's the highest concentrations of COVID, they're in communities that have lower income census tracts. So, and we're one of those. I think some of the rationale behind that, and it gets back to an agenda item we had in December, is we have a lot of crowding and a lot of housing crowding, which isn't conducive, or is very conducive for spreading a virus. I think we also have a lot of employees, or a lot of our residents work in jobs that don't have the luxury of being able to work from home. So they are required to go to work and, again, have exposure in the workplace. But I look around at other communities, and I think our business community has done outstanding in terms of following the health orders compared to other communities. And I wouldn't attribute our high case rate because of that. I really think it's more of a demographic issue and a socioeconomic issue.
If I can interrupt, I look at the cities that were at the top of that list: National City, El Cajon, Southeast San Diego. These are all cities that have the highest numbers of nursing homes, board and care facilities, independent living facilities. And conversely, places like Encinitas and Solana Beach have zero of those kind of things. So we know that congregate care leads to more cases. And I don't think you've been able to get any real data on that, have you?
Very little. I mean, we do know that El Cajon has 11 skilled nursing facilities or congregate care facilities that have outbreaks. We know that those make up 320 cases right now, and we know that 7 deaths have been attributed to those recently. But to be honest with you, Mr. Mayor, we don't have data that shows how many total deaths have occurred at our skilled nursing facilities.
I don't know if I'm sure you don't have it at your fingertips, but one of the things that'd be interesting to see would be you take these communities and you take a look at how many skilled nursing facilities, how many independent living facilities, and how many board and care facilities are in each one of those.
We've actually done that, and we do have much higher concentration. If you take the county average, I want to say we're more than double the county average on a per capita basis.
Yeah, and I would guess National City has at least as many as we have, if not more. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, but I think data is really important, and looking at data, because we want to fight this thing, obviously, but we don't want to fight it in the wrong places. If it's in the nursing homes, but we're fighting it in the restaurants, then that's probably not a good idea. All right. Any more questions before I go to public comment? All right, Angela?
We have no comments, sir.
Okay, then Graham, you don't need anything from us, right? You just
Nope. Nope. And if there's other things that you're looking for in this report, just shoot me an email or a text or give me a call, and we can ensure that we add that to the presentation.
Graham, I would personally like to have this PowerPoint sent to me electronically.
I'll send it out to everybody electronically this afternoon.
That's awesome. I think that's really helpful. This obviously is the number one subject that comes when we're out there talking to people. Okay. All right. Oh, hold on a second. Electronics are not playing nice. Here we go. Okay. All right. The last administrator report is what we just did. There are no commissioner reports on today's agenda. Item 16 is my activities report is as reported. We're now at activities reports for the council members. Mayor Pro Tem Gary Kendrick.
As reported.
Councilmember Michelle Mitchell.
As reported.
Councilmember Steve Goebel.
As reported.
Councilmember Phil Ortiz.
I have one addition. On January 8th, I attended the MTS board orientation.
Sounds exciting.
It was.
Lucky you. All right, there are no general information items on today's agenda. There are no joint council reports on today's agenda. Item 21 is the introduction of an ordinance to temporarily eliminate the need for a conditional use permit. And I'll ask staff to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This is an item is to extend the prior approval of the City Council to eliminate the need for a conditional use permit for outside dining for restaurants in our community. While they still must comply with the local health department orders, we thought we ought to bring this back since it did expire in December. And in the event that regulations allow outdoor dining to occur in our community again, we may as well have this back on the books. We've drafted it so that it goes through the end of June of this year. That date is certainly flexible, but we would recommend that you introduce this ordinance by first reading. It'll be brought back for a second reading at the next meeting on the 26th, I guess is what, no, I'm sorry, February. First meeting in February. You might remember that we did an urgency ordinance last time, and that was because outdoor dining was still being allowed, so we felt it was necessary to act immediately. This is not going to have the urgency effect to it since the county health order is limiting the use of the outdoor dining at this point, or eliminating it at this time. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you may have them.
Thank you, Council. Any questions for Morgan? Sounds like a winner. Okay, Angela, do we have any speaker cards on this item?
We received no comments, sir.
All right, so unless there's any discussion, I'd like to ask for if somebody would like to make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mayor Welzer, vote please.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel.
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote. And with your permission, sir, I will recite the title of the ordinance.
Yes, please.
An ordinance to amend sections 12.09.030 and 12.09.060 of the El Cajon Municipal Code to temporarily eliminate the need for a conditional use permit for sidewalk dining in the city through June 30, 2021.
Great, thank you. There are no second readings on today's agenda. There are no closed session items on today's agenda. And we are at the adjournment, the regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 12th day of January 2021, is adjourned until Tuesday, January 26th, 2021 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a great week.